Greetings students, welcome to second biochem session for Dum Laga Ke Haisha series by Akash PG+. In this session, I, Dr. Gurman Gill, faculty for biochem, will be discussing three very important topics on which many questions are asked in your entrance exams. So these topics are enzymes, electron transport chain and acid-base balance. So in this session, we will be revising various previous year questions, how to attempt them and what concepts and effects you should know to answer such topics. So first of all, we begin with enzymes. So in enzyme, first of all, you should know the classification of enzymes, like alcohol dehydrogenase come under which class of enzyme. For this, you should know that there are 7 classes which you can remember with the mnemonic over, the, hill, little, tim. So these are the 7 classes. So first one is oxidoreductase, that is there is either transfer of hydrogen or addition of oxygen. So from the name itself you can make out that there is oxidation and reduction, that is either transfer of hydrogen or addition of oxygen will come under oxidoreductase. But if there is transfer of some other group other than hydrogen, it will be transferase. It will belong to second class transferase. Example is aminotransferase. Then third and fourth are breaking down bonds. So third, from name itself, hydrolase is breaking bond with help of adding water, whereas fourth one, lyase, is also breaking bonds but without adding water. So third and fourth are breaking bonds. One is by adding water and other is without adding water. And fifth one is isomerase, which you can make out from its name only. It includes racemases and epimerases. And sixth one is ligase. Now you can see there are 2 L's coming. So you can remember first L, that is lyase, is for breaking down, and next L, that is 6th class, is for joining the two molecules. So it involves ATP, requires ATP to condense 2 molecules, that it is ligating to. And last one is translocase, which is recently added class, which facilitates the movement of molecules across membranes like pumps, like ATP pump, calcium ATPase pump, which facilitates the movement of molecules across the membrane. So in this way, you should remember that there are 7 classes, and for mnemonic for this is over, the hill, little, tim. And so first one is oxidoreductase transfer hydrogen, whereas transferase transfer or any atom other group other than hydrogen. Then third one is hydrolase and lyase, which both are cleaving bonds, one with water and without water. Then isomerase and ligase is joining 2 molecules together. So in this way you can remember. So to answer this question now, alcohol dehydrogenase, we know that there is reduction, so it is oxidoreductase. Answer is oxidoreductase. Why not dehydrogenase? Because there is no such class which is dehydrogenase, neither there is any oxidase class. Hydrolase is for breaking down of bond with adding water, so it is also not the answer. So the correct answer is oxidoreductase. And so alcohol dehydrogenase belong to this class. Next type of question which are also very important and very frequently asked on enzyme is, which of the following enzyme kinetics for competitive inhibition? So you should know what is happening to Km, Vmax. So here easy way to remember this is, so we know there are 3 types of kinetics: competitive, non-competitive and uncompetitive. So for competitive, you can say it's starting with like competitive. So the Km is increasing. So here is Km is increasing, whereas Vmax remains same. From non-competitive, you can say no change, that is no Km change, that is Km remains same, whereas here Vmax is decreasing. And uncompetitive, from uncompetitive you can remember with mnemonic underperformer, that is both are decreasing, Km as well as Vmax. So in this easy way you can answer such type of questions which are very frequently asked. So in competitive, Km is increasing, Vmax is remain same. In non-competitive, no Km change, whereas uncompetitive, both are underperforming, both are decreasing. So now the question is asked for competitive inhibition. So what is happening in competitive inhibition? Km is increasing, whereas Vmax remains same. So it is not the correct answer because there is also decrease in wave, but this is the correct answer where Km is high but Vmax remains same. So with help of this mnemonic, you can easily answer such questions. So once we can revise these, like this is a competitive inhibition. We know that here the inhibitor resembles a substrate. So there is competition between inhibitor and substrate. That's why we need more substrate to reach the half Vmax. That's why Km is increasing. So what about the graph? So whenever we plot a Lineweaver-Burk plot with taking reciprocals of Km and Vmax, so we can see that there is one, as Vmax remains the same, you can see the Vmax, there is a single point for both inhibitor and without inhibitor graph. So here as such you can also memorize the graph, type of graph, because it is also asked in your questions. Next is non-competitive. So here inhibitor binds to enzyme other than its active site but distort its conformation. So here we have remembered no K change. So Km remains same but Vmax decreases. So in the plot, Lineweaver plot, you can see Km point is same. So from the same point you can remember this is non-competitive. And we have discussed about uncompetitive, that they are both are underperformer. This is mnemonic only. So both are decreasing. So here you can see there is neither Km is same nor Vmax is same. They are parallel lines. So in this way you can remember the important facts about the competitive, non-competitive and uncompetitive inhibition. So this question was asked in your INICET. Identify the type of enzyme inhibition as shown in the graph. Now here you can see the Km is same. So Km is same for, that means Km is not changing. So no K change, that is non-competitive. So the answer is non-competitive inhibition. In this way you can easily remember different questions and answer different questions on these. So next question is, which of the following enzyme has highest catalytic activity? So to this you should know about the formula, that is catalytic efficiency of any enzyme is directly proportional to Ck cat and inversely proportional to Km. So Km, we know that there is an amount of substrate that is required to reach the half Vmax value. So more the Km, the lesser will be the catalytic efficiency. So here we are given different values like 10 micromole. So we will divide. First one will come, that is 2.5. Second will be 50 divided by 2000, that will be very less. So it is 1 by 40, and third one is 350 divided by 5, so it will come out to 70, and last one is 300 divided by 50, that comes out to be 6. So the maximum value of catalytic activity is C, that is 70. So in this way, if question is asked which has the highest catalytic activity or which has the highest catalytic efficiency, you will divide the K cat with the Km and know the answer, and the highest one is C. Next question also asked on enzyme is, in enzyme mediated reaction substrate concentration was 1000 times the Km. So what does means 1000 times, that is it is more than sufficient, more than enough, that is, so if concentration or substrate concentration is so much high, the reaction will not depend upon this, and 1% of substrate is metabolized to 12% in 9 minutes. If enzyme concentration is reduced to 1/3 and substrate concentration is doubled, how much time is needed to produce the same amount of reaction? So here you see that the substrate concentration is already very high. So doubling the substrate concentration will not affect the reaction, but enzyme that is reduced to 1/3, that means the reaction which is carried in 9 minutes will take 3 times the time to reach, that is it will take 27 minutes, because substrate is earlier also very high, it's 1000 times the Km. So it will not depend upon the substrate concentration but on the enzyme concentration. So if it is reduced to 1/3, the reaction time it will take is 3 times. So the answer is 27 minutes. So in this way you can solve these questions. So here students, you should know about various competitive inhibitors like statins, use HMG-CoA reductase. We know HMG-CoA reductase is for cholesterol synthesis. So the people which are suffering from high cholesterol level, they are given statins, as well as in diabetic also, to reduce the cholesterol level. Similarly, methotrexate, which is an anti-cancer drug also, is used for inhibiting dihydrofolate reductase. Dicumarol is vitamin K epoxide inhibitor, whereas oxybate is lactate dehydrogenase, malonate is for succinate dehydrogenase, and succinylcholine is a competitive inhibitor of acetylcholine. So you should know the important competitive inhibitors as it can be asked. Then the non-competitive or irreversible inhibitors are cyanide for the complex 4 of the ETCs, that is cytochrome oxidase. Fluoride enolase, which inhibits the glycolysis. So fluoride is also added to blood samples to calculate the blood glucose level, because fluoride irreversibly inhibit enolase enzyme of glycolysis. So that glucose is not further lowered down in the blood sample by glycolysis, we add fluorine. Then iodoacetate, which inhibits enzymes having SH group, and British anti-leucite, also known as dimercaprol, for heavy metal poisoning. So these are the various non-competitive important inhibitors which you should remember. Next example for uncompetitive inhibition that decreases both Km and Vmax is phenylalanine, which inhibit the placental alkaline phosphatase. Then you should also know about suicide inhibition, that is when they bind inhibitor which when bind to enzyme make it more potent inhibitor, like allopurinol binds to xanthine oxidase, similarly aspirin for cyclooxygenase. So next are allosteric activators or inhibitors. So these allosteric regulators when bind to enzyme either activate them or inhibit them. Like ALA synthase, as we know it is for heme synthesis, heme the end product. How the end product inhibit? It will feedback inhibit by allosterically inhibition. Similarly, aspartate transcarbamylase for purines, ATP, that is purine will be the activator, but pyrimidine CTP will be inhibitor of this enzyme. A carnitine palmitoyl transferase 1 will be inhibited by malonyl coenzyme A, whereas CPS1, that is for urea cycle, is activated in the presence of N-acetyl glutamate. Similarly, CPS2, which is also for pyrimidine, is activated by PRPP but inhibited by UTP. And HMG-CoA reductase for cholesterol synthesis is also feedbackly inhibited by cholesterol. So these are the allosteric regulators which are very important and you should remember. Then the question asked can be enzyme marker for plasma membrane. So we know that the galactosyl transferase is for Golgi complex, nucleotidase is for plasma membrane, glucose 6-phosphatase is for endoplasmic reticulum, and acid phosphatase is for lysosomes. So these are the fix which you should remember. So to remember this, you should know this table, that is for plasma membrane we can use 5 nucleotidase, adenyl cyclase as well as sodium potassium ATPase. With help of these enzymes we can mark the plasma membrane. Similarly for cytoplasm, as lactate dehydrogenase is present in almost all cells in the cytoplasm, lactate dehydrogenase acts as a marker of cytoplasm. For inner mitochondrial membrane where there is electron transport chain, we know FO-F1 complex are embedded and ATP synthesized. So ATP synthase is inner mitochondrial membrane marker. Why? Because it is present in the inner mitochondrial membrane. Then for endoplasmic reticulum we have glucose 6-phosphatase, and for Golgi complex we have galactosyl transferase. So for lysosomes we have acid phosphatase, and for peroxisomes we have catalase, which helps in metabolism of hydrogen peroxide. So next question asked in your PYQ was an enzyme mixed with 5 millimole substrate. Initial velocity of the product formation is 25% of Vmax. Calculate the Km of the enzyme. So for this you should know about the formula that initial velocity is equal to Vmax into substrate over Km plus S. So this is the formula which you should know to solve this question. Now we are given the initial velocity is product formation is 25% of Vmax, which means it is 1/4 of Vmax. So to fill the values, initial velocity is 1/4 of Vmax is equal to Vmax and substrate concentration is 5. Km we have to find, and again the substrate concentration is 5. So here you can cancel the Vmax. So if we cross multiply, we will come with Km plus 5 is equal to 4 into 5, 20. So Km will be 15 millimole. So by this formula you can calculate, and you should remember this formula for calculation. So the answer is C, that is 15 millimole. So the formula is that the initial velocity is equal to Vmax multiplied by substrate over Km plus substrate. So this formula is important and you should remember. So the next is, what happens to the ratio of LDH 1 and 2? We know that LDH have various isoenzymes which are present in various organs. So what happens? We know that there are 5 isoenzymes. So they are present in different places. First one is predominantly present in heart but also RBCs. Whereas second in RBCs and in heart. Third one is brain and kidneys. Fourth one is liver and skeletal muscle. And fifth one is skeletal muscles along with liver. So normally if we see electrophoretically about different isoenzymes of lactate, LDH2 forms a highest peak. But what will happen in myocardial infarction? Because LDH1 is predominantly present in heart, the first peak will be more than the second. So if first peak LDH1 is more than LDH2, we will say it is a flipped pattern and it is a diagnostic of myocardial infarction. So in the first one will be higher than the second, but normally what is there? LDH2 is more than 1. So if there is a flip pattern, there is a diagnosis of myocardial infarction. Then coming the isoenzymes of alkaline phosphatase, you should know there are 5 isoenzymes. So if alkaline phosphatase is high, it is not only due to bones, it can be due to other reasons also. So or liver. So first alkaline phosphatase is from bile canaliculi. So it is increase in obstructive jaundice. That's why in obstructive jaundice there is an increase in alkaline phosphatase. Whereas alpha 2 isoenzyme of alkaline phosphatase is of 2 types. One is heat labile, that is it loses its capacity at 65 degrees centigrade, and whereas other is heat stable. So you can remember from labile, L for labile, L from liver. So heat labile form is secreted from the liver cells, that are hepatic cell, whereas heat stable is mainly present is placental origin and is increased in pregnancy. That's why there is always high alkaline phosphatase value in pregnant female. So whenever we take sample for alkaline phosphatase in lab, we confirm whether the patient is pregnant or not. If the patient is pregnant, there will be automatically alkaline phosphatase will be increased because it is also secreted from placenta. Then there is also pre-beta alkaline phosphatase, which is for bone origin. So whenever there are growing children below 14 years of age, the normal value is higher than the adults. Why? Because in growing age there will be more alkaline phosphatase formation. And last one is Regan isoenzyme, which is carcinoplacental isoenzyme. It resembles a alpha 2 heat stable alkaline phosphatase, and that is placental region, and it is found in case of carcinoma, lung, liver and gut. So we see that there are 5 isoenzymes of alkaline phosphatase which you should remember. So alpha 1 is from Buralleri Kinochloride, that's why it is increase in obstructive jaundice, whereas alpha 2 is 2 types. One is heat labile, L for labile, L for liver. Another is heat stable, which is of placental region. Then fourth one is pre-beta, beta for bone. That is increase. That's why it is increase in bone diseases as well as in growing children below 14 years of age. And last one is Regan isoenzyme, which is a marker of carcinoma of lung, liver and gut. So if the alkaline phosphatase levels are more, you should rule out that whether the patient is pregnant or not. And second, in growing children also we get more alkaline phosphatase in normal condition also. So this was all about the isoenzyme of alkaline phosphatase. Next is isoenzymes of CKMB. We know that there are 3 isoenzymes, BB, MB and MM. So normally CKMM is more than CKMB, but in case of myocardial infarction, CKMB also increases. So from this we can make out. And for the diagnosis of myocardial infarction, you should remember CKMB increases in 3 to 6 hours and reaches its peak in 24 hours and come back to normal in 3rd day. Whereas troponin, which makes a gold standard, so elevated in cardiac troponin in combination with the ECG changes is considered as gold standard for MI diagnosis. It rises in 4 to 10 hours, peak 18 to 24 hours, and then come back to 8 to 14 days. And last one is myoglobin, which increases in 1 to 4 hours. So you should remember that if question asks which parameter or which marker will be increased after 3 hours of attack, so you will say it is CKMB, because their time of rising is differ from each other. Next is electron transport chain, which is again a very important topic and asked many times in your exam. So here the question asked can be which component transfer 4 protons. So answer this, let's quickly revise about the various complexes of electron transport chain. There are 5 complexes. Out of first 4 are responsible for transport of electrons and fifth one is for ATP synthesis. So first one, that is NADH, Q oxidoreductase, accepts the electron from NADH, and when it accepts the electron, it opens a proton channel and transfer 4 protons here. Then these 2 electrons by mobile complex coenzyme Q are transferred to complex 3, which when get 2 electrons, it also opens its proton channels and transfer 4 protons in the intermembrane space. Further, these electrons are transported via other mobile complex cytochrome C to complex 4. But here when 2 electrons open the proton channel, only 2 protons are transported. Why? Because 2 are used up for water formation. Similarly, second complex, that is succinate, when FADH attached to this complex, 2 electrons are there, but here proton channel does not open and there is zero transfer of protons in the intermembrane space. But these electrons, when are transferred by mobile complex to complex 3, again it will open the proton channel and will transfer 4, and 2 will be transported by the fourth complex. So this is important. You should know that the protons which are shifted to the intermembrane space are 4 for first and third complex, whereas for second there is nil, and for the fourth there are only 2 because 2 are used up in water formation. So now let's answer this question. So here, which component will transfer 4 protons? We know only component 1 and 3. One is NADH Q oxidoreductase. So yes, this is a correct answer. Whereas cytochrome C oxidase is a fourth complex. So here students, you should also know the names of the complexes. Here only 2 protons are transported as 2 are used up for water formation. Fuminate oxidoreductase is not the ETC complex, whereas succinate Q reductase will transfer only 0 protons across the intermembrane space. So the answer is first one. So this proton gradient across the intermembrane space then will move to the fifth complex and rotate this complex in such a way which has 2 parts, FO and F1, so that ADP is converted to ATP. So in this way there is coupling of this electron transport with the ATP synthesis, and finally ATP are formed because of movement of electrons which opens the proton channel, and you should know how many protons are transported. So this was a question. Then question is, phenobarbital inhibits which complex of electron transport chain? So this is very important because many times inhibitors are asked in your exam. So for this you can remember this with the mnemonic: CRAP for complex 1, CM for complex 2, BAN for complex 3, and CASH for complex 4. So CRAP, CM, BAN, CASH, this is a mnemonic which helps to remember the various inhibitors of different complexes. So first of all, you should know the name of every complex. Like complex 1 is NADH coenzyme oxidoreductase. So the CRAP is chlorpromazine, rotenone, amobarbital. Now amobarbital is a barbiturate. So phenobarbital, which is asked, will inhibit the complex 1, and P is for persidin. So in this way you can remember the various inhibitors. Now for complex 2, inhibitors are CM. So one is carboxyl and TTFA, and second is malonate. So TTFA you can remember with carboxyl only, and malonate CM. So with this you can remember the inhibitors of the first and second complex. Then for third we have remember it is BAN. So B is for British antileucide, which is also known as dimercaprol. A is for antimycin, N is for naphthopinin. So in this way you can remember the inhibitor of complex 3, which is also known as Q-cytochrome C oxidoreductase. Then complex 4, which is cytochrome oxidase, where water is formed, which is the final acceptor of electron. So this is also a question. Which complex is final acceptor of electron? That is complex 4, cytochrome C oxidase. So here we use CASH. So for C, there are two, cyanide and carbon monoxide. Azide sodium you can use AS, azide sodium, and hydrogen sulfide for H. So in this way, and one thing more, you can remember complex 4 inhibitors are all ending with IDE, IDE. So in this way, you can remember the inhibitors. So CRAB, CM, BAN, CASH, this is the mnemonic to remember various inhibitors of various complexes. So we know that phenobarbital, that is amobarbital we have done, is inhibitor of complex 1. So this is the correct answer. Next is, what are uncouplers? So we know that electrons which are transported will also move protons to the intermembrane space, and these protons finally enter the complex 5 to form ATP. So if this is disrupted, what will happen? ATP will not be formed. Rather, these electrons, which the energy which is formed will be disrupted as heat, which will increase the body temperature. So the chemical uncouplers are those which disrupts the proton gradient across the membrane space, such that these protons are not used up for ATP synthesis, rather they are dissipated as heat. So you should know the chemical uncouplers are 2,4-dinitrophenol, 2,4-dinitrocresol, and chlorocarbonyl cyanide, CCP. So here these are the chemical uncouplers, whereas physiological uncouplers are thyroxine and thermogenin, which is very important as it helps in hibernation as well as newborn babies to maintain their temperature. So here ATP production is decreased, but rather this energy is used up as is liberated as heat, so to maintain the body temperature. Then there are also some ionophores, which are, when inserted into membrane, dissipate the moments of ions and dissipate the proton gradient. So here also you should know they are valinomycin, gramicidin, and nigericin. So these are the names which you should remember. Then there are also some other inhibitors like A-tractyloside. What will A-tractyloside do? It will not transport ATP. So we know that in complex 5, ATP is formed from ADP. So if there is no transport of ADP inside the mitochondria, ATP cannot be formed. So what will A-tractyloside do? So from TRECT, transport is blocked. Transport of ADP is blocked. So it inhibits transport of ATP. Similarly, oligomycin, we know that the fifth complex has two parts. One is FO and one is F1. So FO part is blocked by oligomycin, so that the protons are not transported and there is no ATP synthesis. From the name oligomycin blocking FO complex, only it is known as FO. Some other drugs like ventirocidin inhibits FO and orovertin inhibit F1. So these are the inhibitors which are very frequently asked and you should remember. The important points for electron transport chain which you should remember are that there are 5 complexes, and what is the location? Inner mitochondrial membrane. And then the complex 1 receives electron from NADH, 2 from FADH, and 3 will transport these electrons, either 1 or 2 electrons, to complex 4, which is cytochrome C oxidase, and where final acceptor is oxygen. So this could be asked. So what happens whenever there is transport of protons? The electrons, the proton channels open in first complex to transport 4 protons in the intermembrane space, 0 in case of complex 2, 4 in case of complex 3, whereas 2 in case of complex 4. So there are total 10 electrons passed in case of NADH, but if it asks FADH, so there will be only 6 because first complex will not transport protons in this. So 10 in case of NADH and 6 in case of FADH, which you should remember. Then you should remember that these protons then enter through the complex 5, FO and F1, and form ADP is converted to ATP. So this is how electron transport chain is associated with ATP synthesis. The next important thing you should know about the various inhibitors of ETC complex, which we have remembered with help of graph, which will inhibit the complex 1 CM, complex 2 BAN, complex 3 and BAN cache complex 4. So this is important and you should know about different inhibitors. Then you should know that the atractyloside inhibit the transport of ADP inside the mitochondria. So it also inhibit the ATP synthesis. Similarly, ligomycin inhibit FO complex and inhibit the transport of protons and thus also ATP are not synthesized. Then you should know about uncouplers, mainly the natural uncouplers that are thermogenin and thyroxine, which uncouples the electron transport from the ATP synthesis so that this energy is used up in heat and for maintaining of body temperature in hibernating animals and newborn babies. So these are the important points which you should know about electron transport chain. So next is acid-base balance. Again, many questions are asked on acid-base balance. So you should understanding should be there how to solve this. So first of all, you should know how to calculate the anion gap. So the formula for this is calculated cation, that is sodium and potassium, and minus the calculated anions like is bicarbonate and chloride ions. So this gives us the rough idea of anion gap. So which normal value is 12 plus minus 2. So here if there is sodium given is 140, potassium given is 4 which came out to 144, and bicarbonate we are given 24 and chloride we are given 102 which come out to be 126. So these are the calculated cations and this is calculated anions, and the difference is 144 minus 126. So it comes out to be 18. So 18 is the correct answer. Sometimes students, potassium is not given because it is a small amount as compared to other anions and cations. So you can also ignore to find the answer. So in that case, you can take sodium minus bicarbonate and minus chloride ion. So two formulas could be used in which potassium is to be added, and in second, if potassium is not given, you can also ignore it. So this is the normal value. It is 12 minus plus minus 4 millimole per liter is the normal anion gap. Then on basis why we calculate anion gap, because on the basis of anion gap you can come out to reach the various diagnosis. So if high anion gap metabolic acidosis is there, it is in case of increased lactic acidosis, ketoacidosis, diabetic ketoacidosis or alcohol abuse. Whereas normal anion gap metabolic acid, that is there is acidosis but anion gap is normal, so it can be due to loss of bicarbonate ions. But sodium and potassium are also lost along with bicarbonate in diarrhea. So anion gap is normal because positive as well as negative ions both are decreasing because both are lost. But it leads to metabolic acidosis because it leads to decrease in bicarbonate level, which are very important to maintain acid-base balance. Then there could be normal anion gap hyperchloremic acidosis where chloride levels are increased, and low anion gap in case of hypoalbuminemia, which are important. Now next question is to find out whether patient is suffering from respiratory or metabolic acidosis or respiratory or metabolic alkalosis, and you should also know how to know whether compensatory mechanism is active or not. So before answering this question, in which you should first understand what are the normal values. So first of all, these are not given in your exam, so you should know the normal pH is 7.35 to 7.45. Normal carbon dioxide levels are 35 to 45 millimeter mercury, and bicarbonate levels are 22 to 26 milliequivalent, and HCO3, that is bicarbonate to carbonic acid ratio. This means alkali to acid ratio is 20. So these are the parameters which you should remember in order to answer question on acid-base balance. So now we know that if the pH is less than this range, it is acidosis. And if it is more than this range, it is alkalosis. So this you should know. Then further we have to differentiate whether it is respiratory or metabolic. So for respiratory, in acidosis, we will go for two parameters, like one is bicarbonate and other is carbon dioxide. For both acidosis as well as alkalosis. So what will happen in acidosis? Either carbon dioxide will increase or bicarbonate will decrease. So basically it is a balance which maintains the acid-base balance which maintains the pH. So if it is acidosis, it is either due to high carbon dioxide or low bicarbonate. So if it is due to high carbon dioxide, that is carbon dioxide is more than 45, then we will say it is a case of respiratory acidosis. Why? Because who will expel the carbon dioxide? Lungs. So if lungs are not able to expel excess carbon dioxide, it means there is some problem in lungs which result in accumulation of carbon dioxide. So it is a case of respiratory acidosis. But if it is due to bicarbonate levels, that is less than 22 millimeter, bicarbonates are less, it means now bicarbonates are managed by kidney. So if bicarbonate levels are less than 22, it means it is a case of metabolic acidosis. Similarly, in alkalosis, that is if pH is more than normal, it could be either respiratory or it could be either metabolic. So what will happen to carbon dioxide in respiratory alkalosis? It will be less. Carbon dioxide is less, then it will be respiratory alkalosis. And if bicarbonate is more, it means it is a metabolic alkalosis. So here you should understand that you have to consider whether it is respiratory or metabolic on the basis of carbon dioxide value or bicarbonate value. Now further, third point is for compensation. So whenever there is respiratory acidosis, now there is some problem in lungs, that's why there is respiratory acidosis. So who will compensate? It will compensate it by increasing bicarbonate levels. So excess of acid because acid is more, and this is due to some pathology of lungs that it is not able to clear excess carbon dioxide. So to help this, our body will start increasing bicarbonate. So every time the compensation is for carbon dioxide, compensation is by bicarbonate, and for bicarbonate, if it is due to less bicarbonate, our body will decrease carbon dioxide to compensate and maintain the pH balance. Similarly, for respiratory alkalosis, if carbon dioxide is less, our body will also reduce bicarbonate level so that it can maintain the pH balance. And if bicarbonate is more, it will increase the carbon dioxide value to maintain the pH balance. So this composition mechanism is always the opposite. So these are the important points which you should know to answer any question. So in this question we are given pH 7.2. Now we know the normal value is 7.35, so it is a case of acidosis. But which acidosis? For that we will see whether carbon dioxide or bicarbonate. Carbon dioxide is increasing or bicarbonate is decreasing, because decrease in bicarbonate will only cause acidosis. Now here carbon dioxide is 80, which is more than the normal value. So, and bicarbonate is 27, which is also more than the normal values like 22, 26. But in acidosis, bicarbonate should be reduced. So here the primary cause is respiratory because carbon dioxide is increasing. Moreover, the ratio of bicarbonate to carbon H2CO3 and H2CO3 ratio is 20. So ratio is normal. But as carbon dioxide is more, it is a case of respiratory acidosis. So in this way, you can answer the question on acid-base balance. And the third part is to also comment on whether it is compensated or not. So for compensation, we know that for respiratory acidosis, we know that the bicarbonate value is 22 to 26, and respiratory acidosis is due to increase in carbon dioxide. So now compensation we have discussed is by bicarbonate level, which will also increase. So if the bicarbonate levels are within normal range, that means compensation has not started. But if bicarbonates have increased, that means compensation has started and compensation is active. So now in this question, pH is 7.3, which means patient is suffering from acidosis. Carbon dioxide is more than normal, that is 60. So it is again case of respiratory acidosis. But is compensation active or not? Now we know bicarbonate normal value is 22 to 26, and in question we are given 28. That means compensation has been started. But Composition has started but pH is still low, that is less than 7.35, so mean it is not fully compensated, it is partial compensated. So if how will we differentiate whether it is partial compensated, non-compensated, partial compensated and fully compensated? In normal compensation, the bicarbonate level will be in non-normal level, that is not changes. In partial compensation, bicarbonate level have increased in case of respiratory acidosis, but pH is still low. Say that it is in process, it is not fully compensated. But if bicarbonate levels are increased and pH has also come back to normal, that if it is 7.35, then we will say it is a case of fully compensatory respiratory acidosis. So in this way you can answer. Now in this question, it is a case of respiratory acidosis, not alkalosis. Now respiratory acidosis, hypoventilation and compensation is inactive. Or respiratory acidosis, hypoventilation, compensation is active. Now we know that bicarbonate levels, normal values are 20 to 26, but in question it is 28. That means compensation is active, so the correct answer is D. Hypoventilation is because in this question they were also given patient is suffering from COPD, which indicates that due to COPD there is hypoventilation and it is responsible for respiratory acidosis, but compensation is active. So correct answer is D. In this way you can find the answers to various questions, and these are interesting one. If you understand, you can very easily answer these questions. So let's quickly revise how to answer questions on acid-base balance. First, you get an arterial blood sample. You will go for pH. So if normal pH is 7.35 to 7.45. So if it is less than 7.35, you will declare it is acidosis. If it is more than 7.45, it is alkalosis. Further, which type of acidosis? Now acidosis can either be due to decrease in bicarbonate level. So if it is less than normal value, that is 22, it means it is a case of metabolic acidosis. Or it can be either or due to more in carbon dioxide level, which is if it is more than 45, which means it is due to lung cannot expel out the excess carbon dioxide. So it will be the case of respiratory acidosis. Similarly, in alkalosis, if bicarbonate are more, it means it is a metabolic alkalosis. But if it is due to decrease in carbon dioxide level, it means it is a case of respiratory alkalosis, that is less than the normal carbon dioxide. Now the compensation is always opposite. If metabolic acidosis is there, the lungs will try to compensate by, so the carbon dioxide level will also decrease. So lungs, how will lung try to maintain the pH? By decreasing carbon dioxide value also, so that if there is less base due to metabolic acidosis, carbon dioxide, less acid will also be decreased, so that finally pH can be maintained. Similarly, in respiratory acidosis, it is renal compensation by increasing bicarbonate levels, and reverse is true for alkalosis. So in this way, you can make your understanding and concepts clear and answer questions. So the next question is, a 35-year-old female present with numbness and tingling around her mouth and in her fingers. Lab investigation shows serum level of 7.8. So it is less than normal. And ABG show pH 7.5. So what is the normal pH? It is 7.35 to 7.45. So 7.5, it means it is a case of alkalosis. Further, carbon dioxide is 50. So in alkalosis, what will happen? Carbon dioxide should decrease, but it is 50, but bicarbonate level is 35. That is, it has increased. So it means that it is case of metabolic alkalosis, because bicarbonate levels are more than normal. But carbon dioxide level has also increased, which indicates that it is trying to compensate. It is a compensatory action. So what is the cause of hypocalcemia in this patient? Now the patient we have understood is suffering from alkalosis. Now what happens in alkalosis? Whenever there is high pH, the ions act as anions. Why? Because at high pH they are converted to negatively charged. So albumin, which is a body main protein, will be more negatively charged whenever there is alkalosis. So if it is more negatively charged, it will bind to calcium, which is positively charged, more tightly, such that free calcium is not available. So a free calcium, so that why calcium levels are low, as well as Due to lower calcium levels, there is numbness and tingling around her mouth. So students, here you should remember that in alkalosis, the albumin is converted to its anion form. It is more negatively charged, and if it is more negatively charged, it will bind to more and more calcium tightly, and free calcium is not available, resulting in numbness and tingling. So the answer is B, alkalosis. So this was all about acid-base balance. So here you should know how to calculate an ion gap. What are the normal values? They are very important. They are not given in your exam. Then you should always understand that if carbon dioxide is going with, there is acidosis and carbon dioxide is going with acidosis, it means it is a case of respiratory. And if it is bicarbonate going with acidosis, that means bicarbonate is decreased, it means it is a metabolic. So here you should understand, then you should understand that compensatory mechanism is always opposite, because there is a problem in lungs, that's why there is a respiratory acidosis. So it will be compensated by kidney by increasing bicarbonate level, because the main aim is to maintain the pH. So the compensation is by kidney by absorbing. So if the bicarbonate levels are within normal range, in case of respiratory acidosis, it will mean that compensation has not started. But if it is increased but the pH is still low, then it will mean it is a partially compensation. And if it pH has come back to normal, it means it is a fully compensated case. So in this way you can solve your questions. So this was all about these three topics. So they are very important. You should know about classification of enzymes, and very important, you should know about the graph, Km and Vmax values of in case of competitive, non-competitive and uncompetitive reactions, because they are very frequently asked. Then you should know about the various formulas, about the catalytic efficiency and how to calculate the initial velocity of the reactions. In the biological oxidation and etc., you should know about the how electrons are transported and how many protons are transported in the inner membrane. And then it's important to remember various types of inhibitors of etc, uncouplers of etc, and inhibitors of ATP synthase complex. And in case of acid-base balance, you should know how to calculate an ion gap and understand which type of acidosis is there and whether compensation has started or not. So that's all. Keep studying. All the best. Thank you.